This podcast is brought to you in partnership with Eva International Media Ltd. Hello and welcome to Down to Earth with Terry Virch, where we talk about what matters down here on planet Earth. Today, I'm super excited to have a good friend, famous baseball player and all-around great guy, Jeff Conine. Jeff is a former Major League Baseball player with 2 World Series rings. He's also coached at the professional and college level and was the Marlins television commentator for years. And on top of it all, he's done an Ironman, was the national racquetball champion, and is the only human to see a Super Bowl and a space shuttle launch in person on the same day.
my absolute claim to fame.
That, for years, if you went on my Wikipedia or on Googled my name, it would say that Terry Virts was on Star Trek because I did like a 2-second cameo on the last ever Star Trek TV show. So yeah, that's probably not the first thing that comes up when you Google Jeff Conine.
I tell this story all the time, and I just told it like 2 days ago because one of my good friends, their daughter is obsessed with space and space travel and astronauts. And so Cindy was telling her the story about the voice message that you left me when I was at one of Griffin's games. I saw a Houston number pop up and I'm like, Houston, it didn't register at first, let it go to voicemail. And of course I answered the voicemail afterwards and it says, "Hey Jeff, it's Terry from space." And I'm like, holy crap. So I tried to call the number back. And of course the operator says, "Hello, Johnson Space Center." I'm like, yeah, Colonel Virts just called me from the space station. Anywhere you can patch me through? And she's like, "Oh, sorry, sir. You have to wait till he calls you back." And I'm like, damn. But the next day he called me back and we talked while you're on the space station for about 30 minutes. It was pretty.
Yeah, cool. I remember that. I didn't know that you actually got somebody if you called that number back. It's the space station has the world's best phone because
oh my God, it sounded like you were right next to me, like literally right next to me.
Yeah, no, but you can call anywhere in the world for free. Nobody can call you. And the phone just cuts out every 30 or 45 minutes. As you go around the Earth, you lose connection with the satellites, which just stops. So like long calls will just end and it's not your fault. So
sorry.
It's a perfect phone system. God, there's so much bad news and there's so many bad things happening in the world. Your story is very cool. And it's a motivational story. I think a lot of people can use motivation, and you and I in very different ways, but we're both pretty lucky guys because we got to do our dream. Well, I didn't get to do my dream. My dream was to be a baseball player, but I got to do my second.
My dream was supposed to be an astronaut, but I wasn't smart enough to do that. So
I couldn't hit a curveball or a fastball, and didn't have much of an arm, and I'm very slow. So other than that, I would have been a great baseball player.
There you go.
So seriously, when you were a kid, is that what you wanted to do?
When I was a kid, when people asked me when I was young, like probably elementary school age, they asked me what I'd want. I said astronomer. Yeah, I was just fascinated with space and planets, and I love that stuff. So I said astronomer for a long time. When most people were saying fireman, policeman, doctor, I said astronomer.
My son said, at his kindergarten graduation, they asked him, and he said he wanted to be an ice cream man, which
brings joy to people.
Hey, that was a good thing.
Slightly creepy, but brings joy to people.
So did you, assuming that you played Little League and stuff, like what was that?
Yeah, you know what? I started off playing T-ball and Little League and all that stuff. And, but when I was first introduced to racquetball, my dad was a longtime handball player. He picked up handball in the 60s when he's training for the Olympics. It was a great conditioning sport. Trained for the Olympics. So he wrestled in 64 in Tokyo and played all through the 60s, through the 70s, and ended up injuring one of his shoulders during a tournament. So he still wanted to be on the court somehow and picked up racquetball. So he joined a little racquetball club about 20 minutes from my house. And I was probably 10 years old. So he introduced me to the game. I went in there and I just banged the ball around with him and my mom occasionally, and became friends with some of the people at the racquetball club there because he was there all the time. And one of the kids that was playing there, he was the owner of the son of the racquetball club, ended up going to a junior national racquetball tournament. And he came back and he told me all about it, how awesome it was. And he got to travel to this club, and I can't remember where the tournament was, but I said, wow, that's something I really want to do. So I started practicing and playing racquetball all the time. And baseball took a back seat to racquetball. When I was 13 and 14 years old, I didn't play baseball. When most kids are out there playing,
Wow.
when most kids are out there playing their rec ball or travel ball,
Right.
whatever. It would travel ball didn't really exist back then, but
Yeah.
I didn't even play. I played racquetball exclusively, and I got really good in those 2 years. And then in junior high. So in California, it's 3-year junior high, 3-year high school. So my last year of junior high, my friends were going out for the baseball team, and they said, hey, why don't you come out for the baseball team? I'm like, nah, not interested. I'm racquetball, hot and heavy in racquetball right now. I was getting really good. I said, oh, come on, man, it'll be fun. You don't have to play that much, blah, blah, blah. So I went out there, and the coach saw me take BP, and I made the team. And then, I kept on playing. I went to high school, and I made the varsity my first year at sophomore as a pitcher, mainly just a pitcher.
Wow.
Junior year, I played both pitcher and hitter. And then I was just okay. I was just an okay baseball player. But my senior year is when I took off. I was the conference player of the year and made second team all state and all that stuff.
Oh, wow. Where in California?
Southern California, a little town called Rialto. It's about 60 miles east of LA.
Oh, wow. Okay. Out in the desert almost.
Yeah, it's kind of, they call it the Inland Empire, tucked in with the San Gabriel Mountains.
Yeah.
If you travel up, I lived probably 5 miles from 6,000 foot mountain range. Then you get up above that to the high desert, but it was super hot in the summertime. So it was considered a desert. Yeah.
Yeah. I was out in California a couple of weeks ago. So that's an amazing story, Jeff, because things were different when you and I were kids. I remember the little league I played in, like we had the same pieces of cloth uniforms every year. And the only difference, everybody had a white everything except for the hat. Like there'd be a yellow hat or a blue hat for the Royals or whatever your team was like. And compared to what my kids had today, it's so orders of magnitude more advanced and more intense. And, it was like back in the day, the kids could just do what they wanted. Now it's like professional. They could be kids. Yeah. I think we've really lost something, the way kids are.
I think we've lost a lot. It's sad for me to see, because when you and I were kids, you played your little league season. That was it. There were no other options. And you went to basketball season, then you went to soccer season, and you were outdoors, and you're being a kid, you're riding your bike. Nowadays, these kids commit to their sports so early, and they play them year round. They don't have time to play the other sports. And I think I've seen that at the big league level now. The athletes aren't as accomplished. They're good baseball players, but they're not as good of athletes as they used to be.
Overall athletes.
They never had to play any other sports.
Well, we met 15 years ago or something. I think I gave you a tour here at the Johnson Space Center, and whenever baseball teams would come in, I'd give the Orioles tours because I'm an Orioles fan, or whoever. And I remember asking, the players many times, and almost the advice that all of the players would give me constantly was, have your kids play different sports and don't let them play year-round baseball. And a lot of those guys were saying the same thing, that, letting kids do different things. When I was in high school, I was on 5 different teams, all of them badly. I was on track and field one year. I played golf a couple years. Anyway, but there's something to that. And I think, we've lost that today.
Yeah. And unfortunately, baseball is an extremely difficult sport to play. So the parents see the glamour of the major leagues and professional sports and think that their kid, that's going to be their track. Well, I don't want to say force them, but they push them into baseball at such a young age to do all these things. But, as a lifelong baseball player and coaching my son's travel team for a couple of years, you recognize the elite players instantly at that age. Who's going to go to that next level, right? And the other people that should be playing other sports and having fun rather than playing year-round baseball. And unfortunately for these kids, the parents push them into year-round sports when they should have no chance of going even to the next level, even high school ball. They should be out there having fun and being a kid.
Right. And that money probably would be better spent putting in a 529 college savings plan.
Oh my God. Baseball is expensive, travel teams and private coaching and all. It's an expensive sport, especially year round. Like you said, if they put that into some other form of payment plan or investment plan, the kids would be rich by the time they
and football and basketball. Right. Football and basketball have full rides, but tell me about baseball scholarships. They're not.
Yeah, baseball, the 35-man rosters, they get allotted 11.7 scholarships for 35 baseball players, which I don't know how they come up with the 0.7. Like, where is the 0.7 person?
Right.
But to divvy up,
but it's like a third
number. It's basically a third. You can give a third of a scholarship to your roster, which, if you've got an elite player, you're going to offer him more.
Yeah.
And that money goes away from somebody else. So somebody else has no money. So they're looking for academic grants or some other subsidy to be able to go to college. And, there's not legislation. There's a movement now to try and get the NCAA to expand that because baseball is the most rigorous of any sport in college. We play the most games. We have the most practice time. We have the most travel.
Wow.
But we can't give the same scholarships. Like you said, football, everybody's on a full ride.
Yeah.
Basketball, it's easier because there's only 12 guys on a team. They get a full ride. But in football, 80 out of 90 get a full ride, no matter who you're on that team.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a tough thing. So it's just a good perspective for parents. And I remember, our kids are older now and they're doing great things. And we can talk about that in a second. But I remember, 10 years ago when my son was going through all this stuff, you had a very interesting perspective and you were like, man, the parents see that they think their kids are going to make the majors. And there's not a lot of, there's 30 teams, 25-man roster ish, 750 humans are playing Major League Baseball. About half of those are Latin or Asian. So
like 40% now I think are on Major League rosters are from Latin American countries.
Right. And so so half are American. So that's 350, maybe 400 or less Americans. And some of those guys are playing baseball for 10 or 15. How long did you play for? 15, 16 years?
15 and a half. Yeah.
Yeah. So in other words, it's not like 400 new people every year. So if you do the math, there's maybe a couple kids in your state that are going to make the major leagues.
It's crazy. The percentages are so low.
Right.
I think the first goal is, as a recreational player, is just to be able to play for a high school, which I can't remember the exact percentages, but very low, even to get on your high school team. And then go to a college. It's like 2% of all high schoolers actually go to a college program.
Right.
And then, of course, to get drafted is 1% of college, which is an elite level, even get drafted in the major league. So now they only have 20 rounds. So only 600 players getting drafted every year. And there's international signees, but as far as in the draft in America, 600 players get drafted every year. That's it.
Right. That's not a lot of people. It would be pretty cool. I want to talk about your minor league experience. But so you're basically doing racquetball, you're doing these other things, and all of a sudden in your high school, you kind of show up as a star. So how did you get, you went the college route. So tell me about that story about how you got picked to go to college.
Yeah, I never had aspirations to play professional baseball. I thought, it would be a great route to get a college education. And honestly, when sophomore and junior year, I wasn't that good. So I wasn't even really thinking about that. But, I kind of put myself on the radar my senior year. And I had a couple offers, a couple schools that were interested. One was Cal Poly Pomona, who had a pretty good baseball program, but a small school in Southern California. Another one was San Diego State. They had some interest, and the junior college route, Orange Coast Junior College was one of the best junior colleges at the time for baseball. And they wanted me to come there and kind of be a two-way player, pitch and hit. So I was kind of mulling over those options, and none of those came about even until the last month of my senior year, where you got kids now committing as 8th graders and 9th graders to these colleges. It blows my mind. So mine came about literally like May of my senior year. I'm going into the summer not knowing anything about where I'm going next year for college. I had filled out no applications, nothing.
Did you take the SATs?
I did take the SATs, and that wasn't getting me anywhere. So we had an all-star game between Riverside County and San Bernardino County. I was in San Bernardino County, Riverside County. We had an all-star game of all the different high schoolers. And I started that game and pitched 3 innings and had a good outing. You know, I pitched 3 innings, gave up 2 hits, I think, struck out 5 or 6, whatever it was. And that was it. So I was done there. And then I think the next day, the head coach from UCLA called me at my home, you know, house phones with answering machines and all that stuff, no cells. And I pick up the phone. He goes, Jeff, this is Gary Adams from UCLA. I saw you pitching yesterday. I was really impressed. And I want to offer you, you know, a scholarship to come play UCLA. I'm like, what? And if you're in Southern California, you're UCLA or USC. Those are the 2 big schools, the most massive sports programs you can ever think about. And I couldn't believe that there was a guy on the other end of the phone saying that he's from UCLA and he wanted me to come play baseball there. So I said, yes, like, of course, right away. I mean,
let me think about it. Yes.
Yeah. I didn't give a crap about anything. I didn't see the school. I didn't apply. It was like nothing. I'm like, yep, I'm in. So that's where I ended up going. And he kind of recruited me
on board with that.
You know, 2-way player. We're going to pitch, you're going to DH a little bit, but
oh, wow.
We had some really good offensive players. So that DH kind of went to the wayside very quickly. And I was a pitcher only in college.
Wow. And so you were at college for about 3 years?
3 years. I got drafted after my junior year. Yeah.
And that's kind of when like the top guys get drafted after the junior, because in college for baseball, you have to stay for 3 years, unlike.
Or turn 21. If you're an old senior going into college, you can get drafted as a sophomore if you're 21 years old.
Okay. And that's a problem for the Air Force Academy because the service academies, the minute the junior year starts, they play this song like taps for academic call to quarters the night before your first day. And as soon as that thing sounds, you're in the Air Force. You can't get out. Your freshman and sophomore year, you can quit if you want. And so it's kind of funny that that night, all the juniors are out there wailing and weeping and moaning. You hear this whole 1,000 people screaming because they know they're trapped in the Air Force now and they can't get out. But
one of Griffin's teammates went to the Air Force Academy. And
oh, wow.
Got drafted and he was in AA with him this year and they called him. He had to leave.
Wow.
Yep.
Yeah. I wish, you know, I get it that you need to serve, but the number of people that are elite athletes and get to like David Robinson, you know, it seems like the military should have some ability to work with the handful of kids every year that are going to go to the NFL or MLB or something, because that just promotes recruiting. The kids at the academy it's just, I don't know. They do need to serve.
If they're recruiting a baseball player that the kid thinks they really have a chance to go on next level, then that would deter them, I would think, to say, all right, I'm going to go play. But if they want me to go serve, I'm done. My baseball career is on hold for indefinite amount of time. Yeah.
Remember Chad Hennings? He won. He was like the defensive player of the year.
Yeah, I remember the name. Yeah.
He played for the Cowboys. He was on their Super Bowl teams back in the 90s. He went to Air Force. And he graduated and went to be an A-10 pilot in Desert Storm. And he thought his career was over. And then the Soviet Union collapsed, peace broke out, and they let us all out. So he actually was a pilot for a couple of years before he went into the NFL. And then he was like NFL Pro Bowler, Super Bowl ring guy, but that's pretty rare. It's hard for those guys.
That's a story there.
Holy crap. It was pretty cool. So you go through college, 3 years. Were you like a starting pitcher, relief pitcher?
I was a starter my first 2 years. They put me in the bullpen my junior year, and I was mediocre at best. I mean,
oh really?
I was kind of injured my freshman year. I had an ankle injury, and then I was just those hit or miss guys. I was one of the best pitchers in the nation for 3 innings, and then they figured me out, and all hell broke loose after that. That's why they put me in the bullpen. Probably 2 years too late, but I mean, even when I was at college, I never had any aspirations of, I want to go to the next level. I didn't think I was that good, and it turned out to be correct. I wasn't that good. But by stroke of luck, my freshman year, we had a pitching coach named Guy Hansen, and he quit halfway through my sophomore year. He wanted to do other things and became a scout for the Royals. So at the end of my junior year, one of our stations as a pitcher was to shag all the balls outside the wall that all of our mashers hit for home runs. We had to collect all those balls and throw them back over the fence. So I'm going out to my post in left field, and Guy Hansen's sitting there in a lawn chair. And I'm like, I just ran into him. I had no idea he was going to be there. I'm like, Guy, what are you doing there? He's like, I'm scouting, man. You guys, we had 4 guys drafted in the first 3 rounds off that team. So we had a really good, really talented team. So I said, what are you doing here? He's like, I'm scouting, man. I'm looking at these guys, the draft's coming up. And so he looked at me, he goes, what are you going to do? And I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, you're going to play a position next year? I know you want to play a position. I'm like, yeah, but Coach Adams said, I recruited you as a pitcher. You're going to be a pitcher. And he goes, what do you think about that? I'm like, hey man, I'm going to write it out and then I'll finish school and play racquetball for a while and get out in the business world and do whatever.
All right.
So he said, what if I put your name in for the draft? And I'm like, I looked at him like crazy. I'm like, as what? And he goes, as a position player. I'm like, dude, I haven't picked up a bat in 3 years. He's like, nah, it's all right. I think you're better suited, in professional baseball as a position player, not a pitcher. I'm like, well, duh, I like a 6 ERA.
Right.
Of course I'm not suited professionally as a pitcher, but I haven't hit. And he goes, I think you'll learn quickly. And I'm like, I said, whatever. And back then there's unlimited rounds of the draft. You could draft until there's no more players left in the country if you wanted to.
Right.
So I just said, whatever. And we said our goodbyes. And so the draft comes a few weeks later on a Monday, starts on a Monday. And then Guy Hansen calls me on Thursday. I'm in my apartment. He gives me a call and I pick it up and he's like, Jeff. And I'm like, yeah, Guy, what's up? He goes, hey man, we got you. And I'm like, what do you mean? I thought the draft was on Monday. He's like, no. That's just like the first round. Our first couple of rounds are on Monday. Then we just keep on drafting. I'm like, oh, I said, all right, well, he goes, we got you in the 58th round. I'm like, I started laughing. I didn't even know they went that high. I'm like, 58th round. He's like, yeah, I don't know. I might've been the last player taken by the Royals that year. I'm not sure. But I was like, all right, now what? I didn't know what to do. What's going on? He goes, well, I was what they call a draft and follow. So they draft you and they follow you because they need to follow me because they didn't know if I could hit or not. So they kind of helped me get into like this equivalent of a semi-pro baseball league in Southern California at the time. And the scouts would follow me around during my schedule and watch my at-bats and make an evaluation. And then by the end of the summer, if they thought I was worthy enough, they'd offer me a contract. So I went with this. It was a beer league team, man. It was terrible. Just a collection of former players that might've played a little bit in the minor leagues, college players like myself, a few high schoolers that were really good that needed a place to play for the summer. And it was terrible competition, but it was wood bats. Yeah. I think I hit like 420 that summer or something like that.
Right.
It's, picking it up for the first time in 3 years. So
you didn't bat at UCLA?
I did not bat at UCLA. I got one at bat, actually. One at bat because our junior year, we had clinched the Pac-10 championship. And our coach wanted to recognize everybody as part of the championship team. So me as a relief pitcher, I barely got to play. Yeah. So he let me play second base for an inning.
Awesome.
And I got in at bat. I got up and the pitcher throws one down and it hits me in the foot, like grazed me in the foot. So I back up and I get back in the box and the umpire was like, Jeff, take your base. I'm like, come on, man. This is my only chance. Let me get it. It didn't hit me. He goes, yeah, it hit you. I can't let you. I'm like, damn. So I had a 1,000 on base percentage in college baseball.
OPS of 1,000.
0-for-0 with a hit by pitch.
Hey, that's OPS of 1,000, man. That'll get you. That'll get you. That'll get you a 9-figure contract.
Right.
Okay, so your summer goes well, and then you
start playing for now what? And he's like, all right, we're going to sign you a contract, and then you report to spring training in March, like mid-March. And I'm like, wait a second, it's August. What the hell am I supposed to do until then? And he's like, well, I don't know, let's work out. And I'm like, well, maybe I'll just go back to school, because they weren't giving me any bonus for. Right. They're not going to pay me enough to really deter me from.
What do they sign you for in the 58th round?
$7,500.
7,500. This is back in the 80s, right?
Which was pretty good for a 58th rounder.
For the 58th round, that's above. That's above slot for 58th round.
Way above slot for 58th round. I thought I was going to get a bag of balls and a bus ticket or something like that.
Wow.
But guy pushed for me really hard. And,
Yeah.
I said, what about instructional league, which was, it's kind of a league after the season's over, all your top prospects go to kind of get individualized coaching
Right.
instruction about whatever your specialty is. And
Right.
he said, well, that's a really tough gig. It's invite only. And I'm like, well, if I can't do that, then I might as well just go back to school. So he calls me back a few days later. He goes, all right. He goes, I got you in instructional league. I'm like, oh, all right. So I'm off. So I said, let's do it. So I signed the contract, went to instructional league, and I got abused for 6 weeks because these are the elite, they're your best players in your organization. They're already professionals. And I've just come out of college, not hitting at all. And
Right.
I think I might've gotten 6 hits in 6 weeks.
Oh, wow.
I thought it was going to be a pretty quick experiment, this whole baseball thing.
And let's say you do a year in the minors, you get released and you go back to school. When you go back to school, you can't play baseball, right? Because you had been a professional.
Good question.
I think it's like a poison pill. If you play professional sports, whatever your sport is, I don't think you can play it again in college.
That makes sense. And if you get drafted, Major League Baseball, if you get drafted before your senior year, they pay for you to go back and finish college.
Right.
So I had that option. If this didn't work out, but you know what? When I signed, I told myself I'm going to give myself 3 years.
Yeah.
And if I'm not close in 3 years,
right,
I'm going to move on and do something else.
Right.
And I ended up getting called up at the end of my 3rd year.
Oh, God, you got called up to the majors within 3 years.
Yeah.
Holy crap. Your story is insane. That's not what most kids are doing. Like, you barely played high school baseball.
Yeah, I went to, after instructional, I go to spring training and I'm equally as bad. I'm just getting torn up, and they put me to work out with the high A team. And then from what I gathered, when the domino effect, when guys get sent down from big league camp, they go to AAA, those guys get down to AA, and then kind of, so I thought I'd probably be in rookie ball by the end of spring training, but I was playing first base, and the manager comes up to me about a week to go in spring training. He goes, listen, he goes, would you just relax and play baseball? He goes, you're going to be my first baseman on my team breaking camp. And I'm like, really? Because I was terrible.
The high A guy.
Yeah, I was terrible. So I'm like, all right. So I started the season. I think I was 9 for 70. I was awful. I'm like, this is going to be. And then we had a coach there. He just passed away last year because of COVID. It was Ron Johnson, longtime lifer in baseball. Was the third base coach for the Boston Red Sox for a while, but just a salt of the earth, in your face, honest can be baseball guy. And he started, he would rip on me every single day. And it made me tough mentally. It really did.
Yeah.
And, stuff like we'd be stretching the day and he goes, Conine, are you kidding me with those swings yesterday? How the hell are you even getting put on a uniform? You're so bad. But in a joking way. It wasn't like, he was spitting in my face serious, but I was like taken aback at first, but after a while it became a joke between us. We started. And then from then on, a switch flipped for me, and ended up hitting 273 that season, hit 14 home runs in a really difficult league to hit home runs, which is the Florida State League. Ended up having Tommy John surgery at the end of that year on a freak play that ended up blowing out my elbow.
Did you get hit by something, or
I was playing first base, and there was a ball next to me where I'm playing on turf, and it had rained a little bit, so it's kind of slick. Guy had a line drive to my right, and I went to dive for it, but my feet kind of flipped out, and I landed, on my elbow, because that's my range of motion. It won't go any further than that. And it's gotten worse over the years, but think about your wrist going all the way down to your shoulder, and it kind of snapped that ligament. Which is
first baseman getting Tommy John.
Yeah.
Well, that means you're not doing anything
I went back to the same team the next year for rehab, basically, because they wanted me in a warm weather climate. And, I had the surgery November 22nd by Frank Jobe, who invented the surgery.
Wow.
And then I started the season on time, April 15th.
It's a year and a half now.
Well, for pitcher, for position player, it's a little bit different, or it's a lot different. But for me, I don't know, I healed quickly, and I started the season on time.
You had, wow. You were playing full speed 5 months after Tommy John.
Yep.
Verlander just missed 2 seasons for his Tommy John.
Yeah. And the first play, of course, the first game I come back, the trainer, first base, you don't have a whole lot of, big throws you're going to make in a game. That's what they're most worried about. So of course, first day, guy on second base, shortstop throws the ball across the diamond, and that guy takes off to go to third.
Right.
And I didn't even think about it. I just grab it and I rifle it over to third base. We get the guy,
right.
Double play. I'm running the dugout, and the trainer is like speechless. He's like, well, I'm like, what do you mean? Well, I mean, everything okay? I'm like, yeah, what are you talking about? He goes, that's the only play I was worried about. And I might've done that play maybe 3 other times in my entire career, but it happened on the first day back from rehab, coming off of Tommy John surgery. So that was crazy.
And wow, that's an amazing, you just have a body that heals quickly, I guess.
Yeah. All my surgeries, all my stuff. I got back on the field pretty quick.
So for the average person listening here who's not a baseball guy, you make it sound like, well, the coach just found me and like I had my lucky break as an actor in Hollywood or something, but you don't get lucky breaks in baseball. You have to be incredibly talented. It's not like you just have to know the right guy to play baseball. You have to be an incredibly amazing athlete to play baseball.
Well, I don't know how incredibly talented I was but I worked harder than everybody else. I think that was what they saw in me was I outworked everyone, and I just wanted to play the game the best I could every time I got out there. I never dogged it anywhere. I always hustled. I always, that's what I did. And I think they liked that drive and that determination that, wow, this guy, even though he's a little raw right now, I think he's going to progress quickly because he wants to progress quickly.
Yeah.
And he wants to get to that next level.
So you were lucky you had people that believed in you, and the UCLA guy hired you and the Royals guy. If you hadn't had a coach who went to the Royals, I mean, to have a 6-year, I would
not have all this behind me right now, for sure.
I mean, that's amazing because you had this talent that just wasn't used. No one saw it.
It was on the racquetball court, really. I mean, that was my sport. That's where I excelled, and that's where I guess that's where my heart was. Because I love that game. I love that game so much.
I love playing racquetball. I haven't played it for years. We used to have a racquetball court here at NASA, and their 1960s gym had a racquetball court.
Yeah.
And then in the 2000s, we got the modern fancy gym, and it doesn't, they're kind of dwindling the number of racquetball courts nowadays. It's a great sport.
Gone. They're all gone. They
It's
couldn't
sad.
justify putting 2 people on 800 air conditioned square feet.
Right.
It's just not a good business decision, which I get it. And in the 70s and 80s, when I grew up, there were court clubs out in Southern California that were massive. We had one that was called Racquetball World that had 35 indoor racquetball courts.
That's awesome. I know it was a big thing when we were kids. We had an outdoor one down the street. My buddy and I used to just go play outdoors, and we'd have to pull the leaves and the rabbit nests out of it and then play.
Exactly.
It was fun. So tell me about, because it was funny when we were prepping for this, you and I have a lot of the same stories, like getting the call or whatever. And obviously getting into the majors that's the thing. That's the pinnacle. That's what everybody wants, right? So you're 3 years in the minors. Did you go like single A, double A, triple A, right on up, or
single A and then single A again, same team.
Right.
And then they gave me a full season again there. I almost had the identical season. I think I hit 272 my first year. I hit 273 my second year.
That's improvement.
A few more RBIs the second year, a few more home runs. And then that off season, I really worked on the mental side of the game, which for me has always been a focus.
How do you do that? How do you work on mental?
I got a book called The Mental Game of Baseball, and ended up working with the guy who wrote the book. He became an employee of the Marlins when I was there early on in my first stint. But because, baseball is just a mental grind. You play so many games, and there's so much failure that it's really difficult to keep that consistency and not get beat down by failing 7 out of 10 times or 7.5 out of 10 times. So I really worked on that, became more having a plan. I went into every at bat with a plan. And that's another level. That's when I went to the other level. So I went to AA and in the Southern League, and I went crazy. I mean, I think at the All-Star break, I was hitting 386.
Wow.
I led all of baseball in every level in hitting, hits, RBIs. It was just one of those seasons that I could do no wrong.
And that was because your ability to handle failure, which happens 70% of the time, right? When you're a hitter, or 80% for lots of hitters, and the fact you had a plan. Those were kind of the two big.
Yeah, I had a plan. I stuck to it, and I had confidence in my plan. And when you have confidence in a plan, that gives you more confidence at the plate, and more confidence you have, especially in baseball, the better you're going to do, the more hits you're going to get, the better results you're going to have, as long as you stick to that plan. So I did. And, we ended up winning the Southern League championship that year. And amidst the celebration, we had a really good team amidst the celebration, against the coolers being dumped on everybody. And I'm freezing cold from coming in from the celebration. And my manager calls me in and sits me down and tells me the great news. The most amazing news that any minor league baseball player can hear is that, hey man, you're going up to Kansas City tomorrow.
That's amazing. This is September.
Like you had just won a championship, so you're on a high from that, and then you get the news that you're going to the big leagues. Takes it to a whole nother level. That was one of the greatest days of my life at that point.
Yeah, I'm sure. This was September.
Yep, September. But it took us a week and a half to win the championship. So I only got called up for like 3 weeks because the big league season was winding down. As well as man call-ups. But
what year was that? 90s?
1990.
90? Okay. Did your teammates know?
Oh yeah. Well, not until after I came out of the office.
Oh yeah.
And there are two or three other guys that got called up at the same time on that team. So we had 4 guys that get called up to the big leagues that year from AA.
Right. Who were they? Like any other famous guys?
Brian McRae, who played a long time in the big leagues in center field. See the other guys, Sean Barry, who played 6 or 7 years in the big leagues with Montreal.
Okay.
Played some in Houston. He was a coach in Houston, a hitting coach in Houston. I don't even remember Sean Barry. He was the hitting coach there for a little while.
I don't know.
And who else? Scott Santala was another guy that had, a cup of coffee basically.
Right. In the big leagues. So you get to the bigs in 1990. Did you stick?
I didn't. I went to Dominican Republic to play winter ball that year. What
was that like? You've told me what the DR was like.
It was eye-opening, to say the least.
You're not in Kansas anymore.
No, it was presented to me as, hey, we want you to go down and play winter ball. And I'm like, damn, I'm tired. I just played 140 game minor league season. I got called to big leagues, and now they want me to go play more baseball. I was like, but they're like, hey, this could be your AAA season. You have a good chance of making the team out of spring training next year. I'm like, all right, well, that's what they want me to do. I'm going to do it. And, they gave us the brochures of where we're staying and how Shangri-La, right? Boy, that place it's a third world country. And it was a lot. It was a huge adjustment. Ended up breaking the bone called the hamate bone in my hand.
Yeah.
And got shipped back to the States to, start that process about 5 weeks after I got down there. So ended up having surgery on that. And so the next season, I tried to get back from surgery too quickly, ended up tearing cartilage in my wrist, had another surgery. So the 91 season was a complete wash. I think I got about 150 at bats in AAA.
Right.
And went back to big league camp in 92 and was having a monster season in AAA. And I was in August hitting like 305 with 20 home runs and 70 some RBIs.
Wow.
And around that time or shortly before, Kansas City signed Wally Joyner to a 3-year contract. I think he was there on a 1-year deal. He was playing well. George Brett was about to retire, and I was supposed to be the heir apparent to George Brett to go play first base in Kansas City. So he signs a 3-year deal. So my manager, who was also my manager in AA when I got called up, said, listen, man, you're not going to be playing anytime soon at the big league level at first base. He goes, why don't you go out to left field? Start playing the outfield. I'm like, all right, let's do it. So I started playing the outfield, never played outfield before. 2 weeks later, Kevin McReynolds, our left fielder, pulled an oblique muscle. The brass for Kansas City calls AAA, and the manager, Jeff Cox, says, who you got in the outfield that's hitting well? He goes, Conine's been out there a while. He's doing great. And they said, oh, really? He's like, yeah, he's been doing great. He's your man. That's how I got called up the second time.
That's incredible. What is the oblique, by the way? Where is that?
Oblique's like on the side here, these rib cage type muscles that are often injured in rotational sports.
Yeah.
So it's pretty common in baseball, and they're nasty. It takes a long time to come back from.
Yeah. Your career is incredible. Like how many coincidences and not expected and unplanned, the whole thing. So did you stick that time? Well, this is what, 93?
Well, I finished up the season with the Royals that year, and then the expansion draft came along. They did not protect me the first round of the expansion draft.
Okay.
So both the Colorado Rockies and Florida Marlins were coming into the league. At that time, you could protect 12 players off of your 40-man roster for the first round.
Mm-hmm. Then
you could expand it to 15 players the second round, then expand it to 25 players the third round. And then I think they only got 3 rounds. So that's how they're building a farm system.
Mm-hmm.
3 rounds of players from every team. So I wasn't protected, and the Marlins took me in the first round, 11th pick of the first round of the expansion draft.
Wow. So you were literally there at the beginning for the Marlins.
Day one. Absolutely day one.
And you stuck after that? You didn't go back down to the minors?
Yeah, I never went back down after that.
So there's some of my favorite baseball books I've ever read are about minor leagues. Have you ever read Where Nobody Knows Your Name?
No, I've heard of it, but I've not seen, or I've not read it.
Yeah, it's a great book. There's a book, I forgot the guy's name. It's on my shelf. It's like 5 feet over there. I should go grab it. He was a pitcher at Yale. I think the book starts out with like, when I was 21, I could throw the ball 95 miles an hour or something. He was a left-handed pitcher. He got drafted, spent a year, he just has funny, it's totally not politically correct stuff. We'd get canceled if we said it out loud, but it was, right. I think it was very real, and it's a really cool book. And he played for a year. He's like, and then his velocity was down 5 miles an hour and he was gone. And now he's a doctor. So anyway, it was a
backup plan.
Yeah, it was a good backup plan. And there's another one, I forgot what it was called, about just what a grind it is. I mean, you made it out because you're a hard worker and you got lots of talent, but lots of guys don't make it out.
The vast majority never make it out.
95% or whatever it is. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's 7.5%. Even if you're signed, when you get signed, drafted and signed, only 7 or 8% of those guys ever even get a cup of coffee in the big leagues.
Right. That's rough. And you're not necessarily raking in a lot of money when you're a minor league baseball player, right? They're trying to change that a little bit, but yeah.
It's
how much did you get paid
below
there?
Poverty. My first year in A-ball, I made $725 a month.
Right.
And that's supposed to cover everything. They don't give you housing, they don't give you food, and that's it. $725. So we had 5 guys that went together on a house, and some of the guys slept on the couch, and you eat at McDonald's and the cheapest things you can find. And
there's not a clubhouse spread. You don't have that?
No, it's clubhouse spreads. I remember one time we had a doubleheader at the ballpark, and our trainer / traveling secretary / everything put like a 5-pound bag of pretzels and a 5-pound bag of animal crackers on a table. And that was our in-between game spread. Buses everywhere and cheap hotels, and honestly, it really didn't improve much until a couple of years ago. My son Griffin, who plays AA with the Marlins right now, he was with the Toronto organization, and they are the ones who, so single A salary was $1,200 a month. Mm-hmm. So in 30 some years, it only gone up from $750 to $1,200.
So it went down in real terms. It definitely went down.
It went down. If you adjusted for inflation, it was below $750.
Right.
And same deal. You got to do everything with your housing and with $1,200 a month in today's dollars, which is insane. Yeah. They decided that as an organization, they were going to bump it up to $2,000 a month as an organization, which was huge for these kids. $2,000, $1,200 to $2,000 is a big jump. Right. And lo and behold, the next year, all of baseball followed suit.
Right.
Everyone, the new minimum in A ball is 2,000. The new minimum in double A was 2,400, and the new minimum in triple A was 2,800.
Yeah. But you don't play minor league baseball is not your retirement plan.
No, but some guys, you know what, that have been around a long time, they're a good player that might get called up now and again.
Yeah.
They make a decent, 12, 15,000 a month for 6 months of the year. Where else are they going to make that kind of money? Especially you get drafted out of high school,
Right.
no other education, you got no other skills. It's like,
right.
They do it until they rip the uniform off their back.
Yeah. And you're playing baseball, which, you love, if you love it, then I would love to go do that for a time. But my point was minor leagues is not necessarily that glamorous of a,
That's awful.
lifestyle.
That's awful. Trust me, it's awful.
So, and you, like in your career, you've been working with minor league players, right? But I think the Marlins or the Orioles or whatever, you go back down and you've helped coach and stuff like that, right? So
yeah, I became a special assistant to the Marlins a year after I retired, and that kind of encompassed a lot of stuff. I was in uniform for spring training. I was in uniform for batting practices at home games. I went and saw the minor league affiliates just to try to help them out wherever I can in the outfield, first base, to help them be big leaguers, and base running, whatever.
Right.
So I got that, which is my passion, is on the field stuff, coaching baseball or teaching the game and talking shop. I love that stuff. So
yeah,
I got a great opportunity to learn the business side of baseball and what happens beyond in the front office and making trades and all that. But also I got my taste of being on the field with the guys and trying to help them out get better.
That's awesome. So you get to the big leagues. Is that intimidating? Do you remember what was your first moment on field? Do you remember that very well in the big leagues?
I remember it vividly.
Did you get hit on the foot or?
No, we were called up. It was a day game in Kansas City, and they told us that we were going to be activated. They're going on the road like the next day. So we're going to Minnesota. It was going to be the first road trip. So I thought, I'm going to be watching a big league ball game. So I didn't bring anything down to the bench. I'm sitting between George Brett and Bo Jackson, very, very intimidated. It was a packed house at Kauffman Stadium. And, just the nerves are like, wow, this is it, So about the 6th or 7th inning, the hitting coach comes down and he goes, Conine. And I look down and he's like, go get loose with the bat. And I'm like, holy crap, what? So I didn't bring my bats down, nothing, batting gloves. I ran up the tunnel to my locker, got my batting gloves down, ran back down. And I hear him calling the tunnel. He's like, Conine. I'm like, yeah. He goes, you're up second. I'm like, holy crap. So I grabbed my bat and I'll never forget this. Willie Wilson, center fielder for the Royals for a long time.
I remember him.
Hall of Famer.
Yeah.
Was sitting on top of the bat rack, smoking a cigarette. Because they could do that back then, so people did it. Right. And he looked at me and he goes, hey, Rook, you nervous? And I'm like, no, man. He goes, yeah, you are. You're nervous. But that was his nickname for me, was Rook. He called me Rook all the time. So I get up to the on deck circle and Bo Jackson is at the plate.
Oh my God.
I'm literally bending down, trying to put pine tar on my bat, get my bat ready, put the weight on.
Right.
And I see the pitch come in, and Bo Jackson hit one of the most mammoth home runs I had ever seen at that point in my career. Cleared all the stands in all the bleachers in left field and bounced against a snack stand in the concourse in left field. And I'm just sitting there like, what the heck? Wow.
Now the pitcher's pissed.
Jim Eisenreich is coming up behind me.
Right.
He comes up and slaps me on the butt and he goes, follow that, kid. I'm like, all right. So I get up there. We're playing the Indians, and I get to a 3-1 count, and I'm like, all right, I'm looking for my pitch, and if I get it, I'm trying to do what Bo just did. Mm-hmm. So I got a fastball basically down the middle. I took a huge cut at it and fouled it back. I was like, damn, that was my pitch. But anyway, I ended up walking. The guy threw a ball in the dirt. The next pitch, walking. I went to second on a pass ball. I got sacrificed over to third base, ended up scoring on a base hit. So that was my first at bat in the big leagues.
That is incredible, man. It's easy. What's so hard about it? Why are all these guys complaining about it?
Yeah, the next day we went to Minnesota and I got my first hit.
Oh,
Bo
wow.
Jackson was on second base and I hit it so hard that he couldn't even score. Bo Jackson, even, who is the most ridiculous athlete on planet Earth, maybe ever.
Yeah. His career ended for injury, right? Is that?
Yeah, he had the necrotic hip injury that he got getting tackled in football, and it was a shame, to see what that guy's career could have been if he would have stayed healthy. It would have been, he might have made the Hall of Fame in 2 sports.
Yeah, that's he was. I remember as a kid. Well, not as a kid. I guess it was the '90s, but he was amazing. That's so cool, man. That's like the stuff of dreams. And did you do what? A lot of guys come up and they'll go 2 for 30, or like Adley Rutschman's been struggling a little bit with that at Orioles. Not bad. He got hit a home run yesterday. He's been picking it up, but anyway, it can be intimidating, right? When you get to the bigs, if you have a bad couple of weeks, then do I belong here or whatever?
Yeah, I didn't start every game. I got some time in here or there, and I think I hit 250 when I was up that time. Then it was, it's an adjustment for sure.
Right.
Big time adjustment. So I had 250, and then I guess they had meetings, and Hal McRae, the manager at the time, didn't think that I was going to hit in the big leagues. So that's why they didn't protect me. And another reason was one of my best friends was a shortstop that had gotten called up. The free agent shortstop was going to leave at the end of the year, and they didn't have anybody else to play shortstop. So they wanted to protect him. So somebody didn't grab him, and they had no option at shortstop. So it's a running joke. He got the brunt of, he was just okay. He was a really good defender, could pick it, great arm, one of the best, smoothest guys you'll ever see in the field, but was kind of light with the bat. And he said he got worn out all the time because I went to Florida and I'm making the All-Star team and all that stuff. And so every time he'd come in, they're like, "Hey, Howard, where's Conine? How's Conine doing?"
They gave you up to keep a light hitting shortstop. There's not any of those available on the market.
Yeah. So, and after I made the All-Star team, after I got the MVP of the All-Star game, he calls me up and leaves a message,
that was in 94,
95.
Okay.
Yeah. He leaves a message, because people got on him even more after that, and he just said, "Dude, you're killing me. Come on, man. Stop it."
So you get to Florida and you're sticking. You're a big leaguer. You're doing well.
Yeah, I played all 162 games my first year with the team, and
wow,
I think I was 3rd in Rookie of the Year voting, and
that's awesome.
Had 2 really good years after that, and I entrenched myself.
And then 97 happened. Talk about that, because that was a big deal. I was in Germany flying F-16s over Iraq, and so now I watch every game on, MLB at bat or whatever. But back in the day, it was like I'd have to get the stars and stripes and look at the box scores at the end. And so I had very little engagement. And I'm an Orioles fan. That's when the Orioles were good a couple of years. And
97, they went wire to wire. I think they start off first day in first place and didn't relinquish it the entire year. They had a monster team that ended up losing to the Yankees.
Yeah.
There was some. I think the Yankees.
Yankees and Indians one year. There was some interference, some fan interference or something. So I kind of missed those years, which was a bummer. But 97 something, the Marlins kind of flipped a switch, right?
Well, that offseason, Wayne Huizinga, the owner at the time, gave Dave Dombrowski, the president of the team, basically free reign. He goes, "Let's build a winner here. I want to see if South Florida is going to support this team." And he went out and got Bobby Bonilla, Moises Alou,
Jeff Conine.
No, I was already there.
You were already,
Jim Leland to manage the team, Jim Eisenreich. I mean, put together a really stud team. And we knew it right from the beginning, because in spring training, we couldn't lose. I think we were like 26-4 in spring training. It was unbelievable. Right. And we knew we had something special there. We finished second to the Braves in the division, but we knew we played the best against the best teams. We beat the Braves 8 out of 12 that year. We played the Yankees in interleague. We beat them 2 out of 3. We played the Orioles in interleague. We beat them 2 out of 3. Mm-hmm. We just had a really special team, and we knew it. So, we ended up winning the World Series that year, and just the fans didn't really come out. So the next year, Huizinga blew up the team and sold it.
That generated a lot of angst when at the end of that season when he got rid of everybody.
Oh yeah, I was on vacation on a Nike trip with Bonilla when he found out that he had been traded, and I'm like, whoa. No, sorry. We were on the trip together and we found out Moises Alou got traded, who had a monster year.
Right.
Like monster. And we're like, oh God, it's over. You don't trade your best player. You know,
right.
You have the best stats in the team. And then Bonilla later on the week found out that he had been traded to the Mets, and then it all fell apart from there.
And you stayed in Florida after that?
No, I got traded to the Kansas City, back to the Royals.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
How were the Royals were not good then, right?
No, they were not good.
Yeah. They were famously bad for decades. And then Sports Illustrated, in the middle of their badness, said Kansas City Royals World Series champs 2015. Remember that
Yep.
headline cover? And then I think a couple years later, they said Houston Astros World Series champs 2017. And both of those came true.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So they just because they were looking at the minor league system. So then you bounced around between different teams right after that?
Well, I played a year in Kansas City in 98, and then I had a 2-year deal. So I came back in 99, and with 3 days to go in spring training, I'm out in the outfield shagging balls, and the manager starts walking out to the outfield during batting practice, which he never does.
Right.
And he was walking straight toward me, and I'm like, all right, see you later, guys. What's going on? And he came up to me, you've been traded to the Baltimore Orioles, blah, blah, blah. So I walked off the field, cleaned up my stuff, and went to Baltimore. And they were actually in Cuba, playing the Cuban national team that year.
Oh, wow.
So when I got to Camden Yards, there was nobody there. I basically came into an empty clubhouse, and
right.
I remember walking down the tunnel and walking onto the field at Camden Yards and like just saying, oh my God, this is the most beautiful place I've ever seen.
Yeah.
I'd never been there. I'd heard about it, obviously seen it on TV, but when you go experience that live, it's still my favorite stadium to play in. And that's when I started my tenure with the Orioles.
With the Orioles. So I agree, man. Camden Yards I was just there a couple of weeks ago. It is a great, if you're never been there, it's worth a trip. Unless you're a Yankees fan or Red Sox fan, there's more than enough of those there. But
yeah, exactly.
It's an awesome.
They can't afford tickets to their own stadium, so they would come down to Camden and buy up the stadium. It's
cheaper to have a weekend in Baltimore with box seats, than whatever in New York.
Hotels, everything to afford 2 tickets at either of those places.
What's the worst stadium? Is it Tampa Bay? Is it Oakland? Is it somewhere else? What's the worst stadium?
You name probably the bottom 2. Right now, I mean, when I played in the old Cleveland Stadium when I first got called up, which was it was called the Mistake by the Lake. That thing was terrible. Old Tiger Stadium was an absolute disaster. That thing was terrible.
Yeah.
Then you had the cookie cutter, turf stadiums, Three Rivers and Veterans Stadium and Riverfront, which I came along at a great time because I got to play on all those old nostalgic stadiums, and then I got to play on all the new ones when they tore those down and built new stadiums. So
Astrodome. How was the Astrodome?
Awful.
Yeah.
Turf was terrible. I mean, it was like, playing on Brillo pads. If you dove for anything, it literally melted your skin off of anything. They did have the best showers in the league. Their water pressure in the shower was like it would knock you over.
It wasn't just dripping down. So you go to the Orioles for a few years, and you get to see Cal Ripken's.
I played with Cal for 3 years. Yeah.
Yeah. He ended his streak, I think, in 2001 is when he sat out.
Oh, his streak ended in like 90. It was in the 90s when his streak ended.
98. Yeah, you're right. I was at test pilot school, so it must have been 98.
Yeah.
He made the record in 95. It must have been 98. But
yep.
So you make it back to Florida. The postseasons you had were with Florida? Did you go in the postseason, Amros? So dude, you were undefeated in the postseason. You have never lost a postseason series. never lost a World Series. They should be, they should be hiring you, to keep this record going.
Right.
So you went from the Orioles back to the Marlins.
Yeah, I got traded. It was the last day of the August trade deadline. Mike Lowell had gotten hit on the hand and broke his hand, so they needed a bat.
Oh man.
I think they were one game out of the wild card at that point. I'm in Seattle in a slump, doing terrible at the time. After the game, we go to the airport to fly back to Baltimore, and you pull right up to the plane, and they do security check right there at a table before you get on. So there's always a line there. So I'm just waiting on the bus. I'm like in the back by myself, just waiting on the bus for all the line to go through. And in walks the general manager onto the team bus, which he never does. And there's two guys up at the front. And he said hello to them and started walking back towards me. I'm like, all right, something's going on. He sat down next to me and he goes, listen, there's a tentative deal in place for you to be traded back to the Florida Marlins, but it's contingent upon you breaking up the last year of your deal with the Orioles. I had one more year left of my deal with the Orioles, breaking that up into 2 separate years with the Marlins. And I'm like, oh, all right. Well, they just wanted it just broken up to 2 years. I'm like, no, I'm a free agent after next year. I can't just take half of that. And my free agent year would be half of what that's not a good deal. So thank God for phones in the back of the headrest of a plane back then.
Oh yeah, you had to swipe the credit card, and
yeah. So I swiped credit card. Well, I first called Cindy and my wife and told her what was going on, and she's like, "Holy crap!" She was super excited because I'd come back home possibly.
Yeah,
there was work to be done, and the trade deadline was midnight back then, and I was going to be in the air at midnight. So something had to be done before midnight. And so I got on the air phone and I called my agent. He was in the air going from Oklahoma City back to Southern California. So I couldn't deal with him. So Cindy's on the phone trying to get a hold of him. And then I would call in every half an hour. You hear from him yet? You hear from him yet? Then I call the Marlins back and I'm like, hold on, my agent. And like, Jeff, I mean, we got to, I'm like, yeah.
Was it Sampson?
Sampson and Larry Beinfest. Mike Hill. Yeah. So long story, we're going back and forth. And then finally I'm on the phone with Larry Beinfest at like 11:58. And he goes, Jeff, I got to get this into commissioner by midnight. You got to give me an answer right now. I mean, I have to tell him. And, in the end, I didn't think it was a great year financially for me, but I got to go back home and be in a playoff run. And I said, do it. And he didn't say anything. He just click. So he had to go off. And so I literally was traded within minutes, maybe seconds of the deadline, August 31st. And by the time we landed, I was a Florida Marlin.
Man, well, that worked out for you because that was the year.
I mean, it was the most exciting month and a half of baseball I've ever been a part of. This team was special and fun and funny. And we just had a blast every single day we went on the field. And
you had Dontrell
Willis, Josh Beckett, Carl Pavano,
Miguel Cabrera.
Brett Kenny. Miguel Cabrera was a 20-year-old rookie.
Right.
Probably the best infield defense I've ever seen. Mike Lowell, Alex Gonzalez, Luis Castillo, and Derek Lee at first. I mean, it was.
And the catcher too, who
Budge Rodriguez came in for a year. It was crazy. Yeah. It was, and we took down everybody. It was one of the greatest postseasons we've.
You didn't win the division, right? The Marlins had never won.
Never. It was the same. I think the exact same record as when we won in 97, the wild card, 91 and 71. 2003 was 91 and 71. So we didn't win the Braves won it again. They won 14 in a row. So, but we beat the Giants in the first round, the Cubs the second round, and the Yankees in the World Series.
So were you, and by the way, there's a great movie. The Marlins did this documentary that season. It's really great. If you like baseball, that's a really cool. I think David, somebody gave me a stack of DVDs. I've got a bunch of those DVDs.
Yeah. I remember Baseball produced that.
You were in the last play, right? Of a couple of those series?
In the division series. Yeah, we were up 2-1. It's a 5-game series. We're up 2-1. So if we lose this game, we have to fly all the way back to San Francisco for game 5. It's a tie game we're up by 1. Yes, we're up by 1, man on second, 2 outs, top of the 9th inning. And JT Snow is at second base. And, you're there, like, you got to do anything you can to make the play because this is
Right.
it.
Right.
So Jeffrey Hammond's at the plate. He swings a full swing, and looking at it from my vantage point in left field, it looks like he hit it hard. So I kind of went back a little bit, and then I realized he got off the end of the bat. So it's going to be way in front of me. So I'm sprinting, which seemed like a minute to get to this ball. And through my mind, I'm like, I got to dive for this ball. I got to catch this ball. I got to catch this ball. I'm like, no, I'm not going to get to it.
Right.
Do I dive for it, or do I try to? I'm like, no, I can't dive for it. Well, if I dive for it and miss it, that guy's going to get to second base, and that's the go-ahead run. This guy's a tying run, blah, blah, blah. So it checked up, and it was kind of a weird angle. I had to go off to the side to get the ball. And I'm like, to me, it took so much time. I'm like, there's no way we're going to get him at home. But, you know, my job as an outfielder is to get to it quickly, get rid of it as fast as I can, and hit my cutoff man. So I caught here, transferred, and I got to about right here, and I saw where JT Snow was, and I'm like, and I saw the trajectory of the ball, and I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe he was just past third base. And I'm like, my throw is going to be, it's a little offline, but it's going to be there in time. And I knew it was going to happen. I'm like, just waiting for the collision. You know, he's going to try to
throw it to the catcher.
Yeah. One hop right to him.
Right.
And he grabs it with both hands, and sure enough, comes in there, and JT Snow
clocks him
over. And then, you know, pudges on his back, and he just holds up the ball like this. I still got it. I still got it. And the place goes nuts, berserk. And that's how the series ended. It was the only series in Major League history that ended at a play at the plate.
That's amazing. That's got to be like, I don't know, double plays for shortstops or whatever. The put out at home has got to be the best thing for an outfielder.
Yeah, when you can throw somebody out, I mean, that's the most exciting thing.
Yeah.
Or rob a home run or something like that.
Right.
That's probably the most exciting plays you can do as an outfielder.
That's awesome. Well, then you guys went and played the Cubs, and you were down, right?
We're down 3-1 to the Cubs.
Yeah.
They had a really good team. You know, Kerry Wood and Mark Pryor were their 1-2. Carlos Zambrano was their third pitcher that year. I mean, just a stud pitching staff.
Right.
We needed a big win at home, and Josh Beckett went out there and just pitched a 2-hit shutout.
Right.
9-inning 2-hit shutout. They were lucky to get those 2 hits. That's how dominant he was. And then we go into Wrigley, having to face Mark Pryor and Kerry Wood. Nobody gave us a chance. We were down 3-0 going into the 8th inning against Mark Pryor. They had 5 outs to go, 1 out in the 8th. And, you know, the whole Bartman ball.
Yeah, that's right.
Ball down the line. He reaches over into fair territory, clanks off his hand. Moises Alou said, oh, he wouldn't have caught it, but he would have caught it. We all knew he would have caught it.
Right.
And we're screaming in the dugout, let's make him famous, boys. Let's make him famous. So Castillo ended up walking. Miguel Cabrera was up next. He ground ball to shortstop, 2-hopper, kind of to his right. He clanked it. Could have been a double play. He made an error.
Right.
And then within the span of 15 minutes, we scored 8 runs. And we were up 8-3.
Who was the manager of the Cubs then?
That was Dusty Baker.
Yeah, that's right. So you're the
Dusty Baker. So 8-3, and then Kerry Wood the next night. We go out. I think we scored first, and then Kerry Wood hits a 3-run homer to put him up like 6-3.
Wow. Right.
And it's the loudest I think I've ever heard a stadium. These people went absolutely berserk. And then Jack McKeon pulls out our pitcher and puts Josh Beckett in on 3 days rest. Maybe not even 3 days. He pitched game 5, and this is game 7. So yeah, we had an off day probably for travel. So he's in 3 days rest, and then shut him down the rest of the way. 4 1/3 of like no hits or 1 hit or something like that. And we ended up scoring 6 more runs. We won 9-6
in game 7.
On game 7. And I caught the last out. You know, it was a lazy fly ball from Paul Bacco, their catcher, slicing, probably the easiest possible fly ball, but I was
can of corn.
So nervous to get underneath that thing and squeeze it and make sure that it was in my glove before. And then of course we go berserk there too.
That was awesome. So you guys you had some serious old crusty managers for the 2 World Series wins.
Yeah, you're talking
old school.
Old school. You know, Jim Leland wore spikes in the dugout. Which made no sense. He smoked and wore spikes. I mean, you can't get much more old school than that.
He was smoking in the dugout when you were there.
Oh yeah.
And
Jack McKeon, of course, was 78 years old or 74 years old or whatever he was. I think he was the oldest manager to ever win a World Series at that time. And
he could run for president after that.
Yeah, he made some of the most bizarre baseball moves you've ever seen in your life. And they all worked.
What's it like? So like the Orioles have Brandon Hyde, who's like a young, I don't know, he's in his 40s probably.
Yeah, he was with the Marlins. I know Brandon well. He coached the minor leagues with the Marlins.
Right. But if you're Justin Verlander and you got Brandon Hyde, like they're almost peers, right? And then you've got Jack McKeon and Jim Leland, who are these ancient, very different. So the question is like the dynamics. What kind of dog is that?
Bernedoodle.
Oh man. Smart.
Very.
Yeah.
Someone just came home, so I had to go greet them.
Had to go say hi. So what's it like as a player? They talk about players, managers, or whatever. Like, there's a lot of different managers out there.
Yeah, it's I don't know. I think a player's manager is just a term for they take it easy on the guys, or they give them free reign to do what they want. Or so yeah, I've had the gamut of guys that were super militant style that were super strict, and other guys that were let you do whatever you want, basically. So, I think the most important part of managing is managing the personalities in the clubhouse.
Mm-hmm.
And, they say Joe Torre, with the Yankees, I mean, God, he had an all-star at every position. How tough is it to manage them? But he managed those personalities. They were the most professional teams I think I ever played against. Their 96 through 2001 teams were probably the best teams I ever played against.
Yeah.
Because they all play the game hard. They play the game the right way. He had those guys buy into a system of playing the game the right way. And they did.
Yeah.
They were professionals. So that's the art of managing. And then, nowadays, especially with no pitchers hitting anymore, it's all DH.
Mm-hmm.
There's not a whole lot of, it's just basically managing a bullpen is the only thing you're doing now as a manager. You got so many big arms down there. Most of the pitchers, 5-6 innings are out of there and they go to their bullpen. They go to their guys.
And everybody's throwing 98 out of the bullpen these days.
Crazy.
It's insane. Yeah,
Crazy.
That's crazy. What happened, and you mentioned 01, I think the only game literally in my entire life, there's been one time that I rooted for the Yankees, and that was the first game after 9/11. And then the other games I was rooting for the Diamondbacks, but I did root for them that one game. So what's your 9/11 story? You were in the big leagues then, right?
Yep. We were in Baltimore. We had just gotten back actually the day before. On September 10th, we had an off day. It was a Monday, I believe. I went to the Secret Service Training Center. I had a friend that was in the Secret Service, and we went down to the Secret Service Training Center and we got to do all the, drive the cars and shoot the guns and play like mock-up AOP drills, attack on principle drills. And it was the greatest thing ever. It was like adult Disneyland for me. I loved it.
Man, that's awesome.
We did all that. And the next morning I'm in bed and my wife calls me and I'm sleeping. And, back then, baseball player, you don't wake up till 10 or 11 in the morning every day. She calls me and says, turn on the TV. And then we kind of just sat there in silence for an hour and watched everything unfold. Major League Baseball canceled all games for the foreseeable future. And so I drove home. I said, I'm not going to stay here. My family was in Florida at the time. And I asked our general manager, I'm like, hey, do you mind if I drive home? I'm going to drive home. So I drove home. I was on the first flights back when they opened airspace back up. One of the first flights back on a Southwest flight, 15 people on the plane, ghost town. And, I'm sitting there in the waiting area, getting ready to board. I'm checking everybody out. Like, all right, that guy looks a little suspect. And I picked out this big cowboy looking guy. I'm like, all right, he and I are going to be together and that guy's not going to make it to the cockpit. It's just crazy how your mind went.
Yeah.
Got back to Baltimore and we played in New York about 15 days later. And it was surreal. I went down, I saw Ground Zero, and to be in New York at that time, I was a Yankee fan at that time, even playing against them because of everything those people went through. And
I think the whole world was. for a brief time. It was okay. You can go back to hating them now.
I tell all the Yankees fans, I'm a Yankee fan. I'm like, yeah, I love the Yankees on the side of my ring.
It's like people talk about the Tomcat or whatever. I'm like, oh, I got some time in the Tomcat in my gun sight. Same thing. So back to the World Series. So you ended the NLDS and you ended the NLCS. How about the World Series? That was in New York, right?
It was in New York, Yankee Stadium. That's where we opened up. And a friend of mine, good friend of mine, is the biggest Yankee fan ever. He grew up in New York and has been a Yankee fan his whole life. And
right.
So I called him on the way in from the airport. We're going to the Yankee Stadium for a workout. And he was at Game 7 when they beat the walk-off and they beat the Boston Red Sox. And he's like, dude, he goes, as much as I hate to say it, he goes, you guys are going to win. I'm like, what are you talking about? And he goes, the Yankees just had their World Series. They're spent. Everything. The fans, they're just, that was such an emotionally charged, they beat the Boston Red Sox in Game 7.
Yeah.
Walk-off style, extra innings. I mean, so it was interesting that, the next day we play and we would line up and the crowd is for introductions and it was very subdued. Like they were like, oh, the Marlins are here.
Yeah.
Yeah. We just beat the Red Sox.
Plus you're the Marlins. You're not the Dodgers or the Giants.
This is going to be super easy. I'm like,
yeah,
I think he's right. I just had a feeling. And we ended up beating him Game 1. We lost Game 2 and then we won 2 out of 3 at home. And then Josh Beckett comes out and pitches one of the best pitch games in World Series history, probably in game 6.
It was 4-2.
Yep.
So, and that was in that old crappy stadium.
Yeah, that was a crappy stadium, but it was Yankee Stadium. And to win, if you can't win at your own home ballpark, to walk onto Yankee Stadium and celebrate is pretty special.
Oh wait, yeah. So you did your 3-game. I was talking about the Marlins Joe Robbie Stadium, but you had to go back to New York. Yeah. So you went back and won the thing and celebrated in New York. Which one was better, 97 or 03?
I don't know. I get asked that all the time, and they're different animals. But I will say I had more fun in 03 than I've ever had on a baseball field. So I don't know. I just kind of leaned toward that.
Yeah.
Just because
you guys weren't supposed to win, and
no, nobody gave us a chance, and a bunch of young players, kind of no big stars really. Miguel Cabrera was a rookie. Dontrell had a great year, but he was a rookie. Just a lot of great stories.
I think the best at bat in baseball that I've seen is the Miguel Cabrera, Roger Clemens.
Phenomenal.
You know what I'm talking about?
Of course.
The first pitch is like at his head.
Dusted him, knocked him, at his neck or whatever, and then taking him deep opposite field and
against Roger Clemens.
Just like, that just set the stage for his career. That's what kind of player he was.
Yeah. I remember you telling me the words you used were, it's not fair what that man can do with a baseball bat. Talking about Miguel Cabrera.
Right-handed hitter, what he did was made it effortless and just could do whatever he wanted. It was crazy. Yeah. To see him, get his 3,000th and do all that this year was pretty special. And I got a special baseball. A friend of mine gave me a ball that was signed by the 4 Triple Crown winners: Carl Yastrzemski, Frank Robinson, Mickey Mantle, and Ted Williams. So I got to take that ball down to the stadium when Miguel Cabrera came, and when he won the Triple Crown, he added his name to that ball.
That's amazing.
I don't know if any other balls like that exist in the world right now, but I've got one of them.
Where all the Triple Crown. Wow. Is that, do you have it? Is that behind you on the wall back there?
It's one of those balls over there.
Over there. That is so cool. So after the Marlins, and then of course the Marlins do what the Marlins do and they blow it all up because nobody's coming to the games. In all fairness, I know everybody hates the Marlins as an organization, but no one shows up. So what are they supposed to do?
Yeah. I mean, they had an excuse. The summer down here is brutal. I mean, it's incredibly hot, super humid. To go sit in this type of weather, I get it. It's brutal. But everyone thinks that we blew up that team after 03. We didn't. We had 2 more good years, 04 and 05. Jeffrey Loria put some money into the team and we went after it. We got Carlos Delgado,
Right.
First base, we got Armando Benitez to close out games. We had Todd Jones one year closing out games. We had really good opportunities to make it to the postseason, and for whatever reason, we just didn't put it together when we needed to. So then 06, of course, they sold everybody off, and that's when you know, the kind of rebuild began. But you know, when they build a new stadium and it's air conditioning, you don't have that excuse anymore.
I gotta say that stadium is spectacular. I mean,
It's
that
really,
is
really nice. It's just
yeah.
a great stadium.
Yeah.
Really nice stadium, and you know, air conditioning. There's no reason not to come.
Yeah. It's just, there's no other stadium like it that I've ever seen. It's a Miami looking stadium. It's white and colorful, and you know, Camden Yards is like traditional baseball. That's
right.
That's like the cathedral of baseball, but the Marlins Stadium is the Miami of baseball. It's really it's a very cool place. If you haven't been, go. I recommend it.
Yeah, I agree. Great place to see a game.
After that, though, you went back to the Orioles. You did the Reds. You did a couple other teams, right?
Yeah, I did 4 teams in 2 years. So, you know, I got signed with the Orioles. They traded me to the Phillies at the end of that year. Then the Phillies traded me to the Reds in the offseason. And then I knew that was going to be my last year. My contract had kicked in for that year, so I knew it was a great time to walk away from the game. And
what year was that?
2007. I did my own personal farewell tour, you know.
Right.
And then a GM comes to me getting close to the August deadline. He's like, listen, we're not going anywhere. You're not doing anything. I know this is your last year. Do you want me to try to get you with a contender? I'm like, absolutely. So I get traded to the New York Mets, who were in first place at the time. We get down, we have 7-game lead with 17 games to play.
That was a disaster year. Yeah.
We did not make the playoffs. We lost 7 straight to the Phillies, who were in second place. And we lost to the Marlins on the final day of the season. We had to win the final day of the season, and the Phillies had to lose in order for a playoff the next day.
Right.
So we needed help. But we gave up 7 runs in the first inning against the Marlins on the last day. And that was it.
I remember, I think Carlos Beltran was there, right?
Beltran, Delgado.
Yeah.
We had a good team, really good team.
I forgot about the 07.
Lavin was there.
Yeah. So in 07, baseball's over. And that's a big topic for most people. What is that like to transition from the pinnacle of your game as a baseball player? I mean, it's kind of like leaving NASA. I had a very 180 degree transition personally, but you kind of stayed in baseball.
Well, transition wasn't difficult for me because I had a whole year knowing that it was my last year.
Right.
And I knew that I was done. My skills had, you know, as a part-time player, play against platoon, you know, against lefties, and
right.
I did okay. I hit like 260 something my last year, which is okay, but I was done. I didn't want to travel anymore. My kids were at an age where I really want to not miss any more of their stuff.
Yeah.
It was a good time in my life to just walk away from it, and I was happy. I was fine with it.
Yeah.
So I took a year and trained for the Ironman. That's what I wanted to do. And then the following year, I went to the Marlins, and they offered me a position with the Marlins as a special assistant. And that's what I did for the next 9 years.
When doing that, you would just help advise them on, hey, this guy's looking good? Or
I did a little bit of everything. You know, spring training, I was in uniform for batting practice, like we talked about. I was in uniform for spring training, instructing and learning the business side. I was only required to be at home games. I took a few road trips here or there, but it was a perfect gig for me.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. Well, we had a interesting event, 2 interesting events for my space shuttle flight. The first one, I opened up the segment with your Super Bowl story, and I am sure you're the only human being who's ever done this.
Yes, I probably guarantee it. You know,
I woke up
fighters to the launch. We all go up there. David Sampson, his family, my family.
Yeah.
It's a 4:22 a.m. launch. It's gonna be the last at night. It's not at night, but in the dark space shuttle launch. You were 1:30, right? And then
STS 130, yeah.
And 134 was the last one.
135.
135.
Yeah.
But this was going to be the last one at night, you know? So it was like, wow, big deal. And we were so excited. And we got a tour of the Space Center that day. And we go back to the hotel, and we get back to the the center that night, and there's all kinds of the introductions and national anthem and all the big wigs are there. And then, we go out in the balcony and you see all the clocks and it's T-minus, and then it stopped at like T-minus, what was it? 7 minutes. And
it was a little while before. Yeah.
Because there was some at like 30 minutes and then they started again because there was clouds over the alternate launch or landing site. So we're like, come on, just blow over. And they scrubbed it because you have a very short window.
Yeah.
And they're going to do it. We're doing it the next morning at 4:23 instead of 4:22. I'm like, oh, shit. I've got Super Bowl tickets the next day
in Miami.
Paid a lot of money for in Miami.
Yeah.
And I had a friend that was flying in for the game, and I said, so that wasn't a question. I knew I was going to go back. I didn't know if I was coming back for the launch. And I'm like, when am I ever going to be able to do this? See a launch? I said, screw it. So we drove all the way home. Everybody went to bed because it was, 7 o'clock in the morning when we got home. I napped for about 2 hours. Me and my buddy went down to the stadium. We did all the pregame stuff, did all the NFL experience stuff, went to the Super Bowl. And I'm not a football fan, but the event was obviously very cool.
Super Bowl.
We left at halftime because we had to get back up to Cape Canaveral. We left at halftime, made the drive all the way back up there, and saw one of the coolest things I've ever seen in my life. It was just, it's mind-boggling. You strapped to the head of these 3 engines and rockets that propel you into space, and the power and the majesty of that thing going off at night was spectacular. I have it on my phone. I show that video all the time.
It's pretty awesome. I love, if you Google STS 130, people posted their home videos on YouTube and people are screaming. Nighttime turned to day, right? When the rocket engines lit up. It was pretty awesome.
Beyond awesome. It was, and like you said, for me to go, I saw the Super Bowl. I was at the Super Bowl, and then I drove back up and saw the launch. I don't think anybody else has done that.
That's got to be the only time. So Samson was there the first night, but he didn't come back. Oh, there you go. There it is. Oh, wow. Oh my God, that's awesome. Send me that. You need to send me that.
Yeah, I will.
I love that.
And then you don't understand, we're 3 miles away there, right?
Yeah.
Then the sound hits you, and your clothes are.
Yeah, it's like
you're here now. It's like
it's like this. The sky's ripping apart.
It was amazing.
Yeah.
And then 8.5 minutes later, you're in space.
Yeah, it's crazy. You're floating. Trust me, I know. I've written a couple books about it, and trust me, it's pretty awesome. Well, then, so a few months later, David Sampson, the president of the Florida Marlins, had given me a jersey, had my name on it. It said 130, and flew it in space, took some pictures, and I brought it back to like present to the Marlins so that they could do whatever. By the way, at Camden Yards, years later on my second flight, I flew a 43 Orioles jersey. And it's still on display. Like when you go up to the club level, they've got like their World Series trophies. They used to have Buck Showalter's manager of the year. He took that when he left. And my jersey is like on right behind home plate. Yeah, it's very cool. Anyway, so I go to the Florida Marlins to give the jersey back. That was a pretty cool story.
Yeah, it was a ridiculous story because not only, you're coming back and we got to spend time with you. And so they had these big numbers on the outfield wall, and they're ripping off numbers every single night as a countdown to opening the new stadium. So you were there that night to tear down a number. And
I picked the day by random. I just went, I'm free this week. Hey, how about if I come then? And David's like, okay, that sounds good. I just randomly picked the day.
Which is the most bizarre part of the story. And we're up in the suite, and they come up to get you and lead you down. And I remember Samson, he just like slapped in the face. Like someone just came up and like, dummy, look what's happening. He looks at me and he goes, look what number he's about to tear down. And I looked down there, and it hadn't even dawned on me. I'm like, oh my God, you were ripping off 130. Mm-hmm. And you were STS 130. You got to keep that big 130 banner there ripping off the wall. And I thought that was the most ridiculous thing ever. That was so cool.
That was very cool. Well, they tore it down and you guys built an amazing stadium. The I th- that just gave me goosebumps. I didn't even realize. Yeah, when I got out there, I was like, wait a minute, and I'm like, I've got 130 on my back. Why is this 130? It took me a second to realize what had.
You didn't know
what
it
had
either.
happened. Yeah, no, I had no idea. Yeah, I had no idea until I got there, until I got to the outfield, because I think it was like on left field. You had to pull this. It was like covered up, and you pulled it down, and
exactly. Yeah.
Anyway, though, that's a good place to end this thing. But amazing stories. I think I could talk baseball for years. But the kind of things that have happened in your career and in mine too. It's just good lessons learned, or just positive stories for anybody, right? Like persevering, working harder than the other guy, working on your mental game. That's something that we all there. Whatever job you have, you got skills, but keeping yourself mentally focused is a lot of times more important than your physical skills.
I think so. Yogi Berra said it best. He goes, baseball is 90% mental. The other half is physical.
And there's a lot of versions of that. I had not heard that one. I like that. Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks for your time, Jeff. I appreciate it. And
always a pleasure. Like you said, just our parallel careers, being able to follow you doing what you did while I was doing what I did was it's been a lot of fun over the years.
It's been really cool. The one advantage that baseball has is that the pay's a little bit better. As long as you get out of the minor leagues. NASA's better than the minor leagues, but major leagues is better than
a lot of people. This is one thing I'll add is that everyone thinks that you get to the big leagues, everyone plays 10 plus years and everybody millions and millions of dollars, but the reality is average major league career is only 4.5 years long. So
and you're making
it's hard to get there, but tougher to stay.
Yeah, exactly. And these guys are look, the league minimum just went up 600,000 or something like that.
725, I think.
725, which is great. But if you do that for 4 years and then you don't have another career after that,
Remember, not like 50% of these guys are from high school. They got drafted out of high school.
Right. So you don't feel sorry for the big leaguers, but if the average career is 4 or 5 years, that means half the people are there for less than that. And your agent takes a cut, Uncle Sam takes half. So it's not like everybody who's ever touched the big league is ridiculously wealthy.
No. Especially in my day. I mean, salaries have gone up 20-fold, so it's like you talk to the Andre Dawsons of the world or Tony Perez. I mean, they made nothing compared to what they make now.
Right. Exactly. Okay. Well, hey, thanks for the time. And for the listeners, if you guys love the podcast, please subscribe or give us a rating. I appreciate it. So thanks a lot, Jeff.
All right. My pleasure, Terry.